Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos a la edición número 22 de Next Secure, el que se ha convertido ya en el evento de ciberseguridad con mayor trayectoria de Península Ibérica. Además, este año es la primera edición online, dada la cual situación en el escenario COVID nos hemos querido dejar de celebrar este encuentro tan importante en que nos encontramos con expertos del sector de la ciberseguridad y conocemos de primera mano las tendencias. Soy Joana Serra, Barcón Portugal de S21SEC y os acompañaré durante esta jornada para presentaros a todas las personas que tendremos el placer de escuchar hoy. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en esta cita, donde estamos más de 500 profesionales para conocer las últimas novedades del sector que está en constante evolución. Queremos hacer un agradecimiento especial a todos los patrocinadores del evento, a los patrocinadores Platinum, Checkpoint, FireEye y Aruba HPE, así como a nuestros patrocinadores Gold, BitSight, Qualis, Trend Micro y Fortinet. Veréis debajo en nuestra web unos espacios dedicados a nuestros patrocinadores, donde podéis consultar información y dejar vuestros comentarios. Este año nos centraremos en las problemáticas a las que enfrentan los CISOs en el nuevo escenario y en la ciberseguridad en entornos cloud. La seguridad al 100% no existe y la tecnología es vulnerable, pero no tenemos que proteger a nuestros activos y para eso necesitamos conocer a los fabricantes más punteros y las estrategias más apropiadas para protegernos y no para nuestro negocio. Además, todo lo que escucharemos aquí podéis verlo en práctica en las dos salas laboratorio, donde se van a hacer en paralelo demostraciones de las últimas tecnologías. También quiero comentaros que existe traducción simultánea, podéis elegir y escuchar las ponencias en castellano e inglés y además podéis dejar vuestros comentarios en el chat que las contestaremos cuanto sea posible. Ahora, Marco Rotini, CTSO EMEA de Qualys, realizará el primer laboratorio de la jornada con su charla titulada VDMR, cómo automatizar su proceso de mitigación y gestión de vulnerabilidades, reduciendo la aparición de riesgos. Marco es un profesional orientado a los resultados con casi 30 años de experiencia en TI y 20 años de experiencia en el sector de la ciberseguridad. Trabajó para muchas compañías como Scare, Stonesoft, McAfee, FireEye y dirigió muchos equipos y proyectos europeos. Se unió a Qualys en 2018 como director técnico de seguridad EMEA. Adelante, Marco.
Today I'm here to talk to you about what I call the Qualis Difference. Qualis provides a difference in boosting and empowering fundamental capabilities across our customers. And I will start with from 10,000 feet altitude to highlight what are three of these so-called holistic differentiators. Of course, you can hear such high-level differentiator from many sources. What makes the Qualis difference is that we start from visibility. We believe that visibility should have a fundamental and important role in providing the company with a proper awareness across their digital landscape. After that, you can start building your detection and response capabilities. Second important differentiator, we strive to provide operational efficiency, acceleration in the workflow. And how we do that, tangibly, pragmatically, we do through automation. By automating the workflow, we believe that we can give time back to teams to do a much better job and have a much better operational effectiveness. Third, but not least important, we strive to mitigate the risk. Risk mitigation is a tough and huge desiderata from many CISOs and security practitioners, but risk is also difficult to calculate. So we want to offer a tangible and pragmatic metric, which is the time to remediate. Time to remediate is a simple calculation that can be applied to multiple processes across the organization. It fundamentally starts from, for example, applied to vulnerability management. It starts to calculate from when a vulnerability is discovered in the digital landscape to the moment where it gets prioritized for resolution or remediation until it gets remediated by deployment of a patch. Or if we transpose the example into a cloud environment, the moment we detect that a S3 bucket, for example, in Amazon Web Services is misconfigured, and then we highlight the proper way to fix it using the proper technology, and then we apply the remediation through the IT or cloud team. And then we calculate the time elapsed, and we summarize all the time. That's we achieve a realistic and pragmatic metric about the effectiveness of our security program. So how do we deliver this differentiator? Well, we ground on something that we have been developing for the last 20 years. Since 1999, Qualys has been building this platform and refining this platform to perfection. On the right-hand side, you see eyes, you see sensors that are specialized to continuously collect the data across all the environment in the digital landscape. And this data, which are raw data or raw metadata, are beamed up into what we call the brain. So all these sensors are specialized for the environment they are deployed: containers, cloud environments, traveling laptops, mobile devices, networks, or networks that cannot be scanned. And when they beam up all this data into the brain, in the brain, Qualys performs 4 important operations. We normalize data, we make them consumable in a uniform way, we index them, we index over 3 trillion data points in our cloud, which means fast answers to many questions. We categorize them, and I will come back to this in a minute about how important this is. And more importantly, we enrich the context. We overpose our research, the data that we produce, our cyber threat intelligence, our IT enrichment, to the data that we collect and consume. And we distribute for consumption all this data through a range of several applications that are tightly integrated to support IT processes, security processes, and compliance processes. Through these platforms, we want to solve tangible problems, realistic problems, real issues that customers are still struggling with. First and foremost, visibility. In a situation like today where many people are starting working from home or are even working from home more than before, the digital environment becomes even more fragmented. Not to mention cloud adoption, application containers, enterprise mobility, all these trends for digital transformation, they are lowering the capability to view, to understand what you have in your digital environment. And how can you detect how can you defend or protect if you don't know that you have something in your digital environment? That's why visibility is important. You may have heard about the Verizon DBIR, or Data Breach and Incident Response report, that have been published a few days ago. On page 22 of this report, you will find a very meaningful example of how important the asset inventory is. They mention the XIM mail daemon, which have been discovered in several servers to be vulnerable from a vulnerability that has been detected in 2019. So strange that such an important entity like a mail server is still vulnerable to this vulnerability in many cases. A closer look to these many cases revealed that these entities were suffering vulnerabilities that were much, much older than the XIM vulnerability, which means that it was not that these servers were not patched for the XIM vulnerability. They were not patched at all, or almost at all. So this caused the problem of data leakage, the problems of attack, when you don't have proper visibility and an ideally constructed asset inventory. And then once you gain visibility, you are overwhelmed with vulnerabilities, and prioritization becomes an issue. Because time to weaponize, that is the time that elapses from when a vulnerability is discovered until it becomes an exploit, it's shortening, it's decreasing. We are speaking about averages of 7 days. There has been a recent example of salt stack vulnerability that became exploitable in 3 days. So this is an extreme example, but gives you a proper idea of how important it is to understand which are the vulnerabilities that matter and how to remediate them in the fastest way possible. Third, but not least important, every organization has its own complexity because every organization has multiple teams. Maybe these teams have already taken care of the task that they are after with different tools like compliance software, like IT software, like CMDB, like vulnerability management software. If these systems are not integrated and well connected, then the time to remediate increases because complexity brings bureaucracy or brings slowness in operational effectiveness. So these are the problems that led Qualys to think to a new process, a new innovation. That's what VMDR is. It is conceptually a workflow that is profoundly innovating the process from building an asset inventory, from gaining visibility across your digital biodiversity, all the way through detecting vulnerabilities, prioritize their resolution, and ultimately resolving them by remediating the vulnerable surface. Enough for the theory. Now I will switch to a live installation of VMDR to provide you a tangible and pragmatic demo of the concept that I just exposed in theory. So, as I mentioned, Qualys platform provides you a whole list of applications to consume this data, and you can see the MDR is at the top here. Let me start with the Global IT Asset Inventory. And Global IT Asset Inventory is the fundamental single source of truth that you should strive to build. I mentioned before how Qualys has multiple eyes. One of these eyes is represented by the Cloud Agent. Cloud Agent is a very minimally impacting software agent. We are speaking about 2-3 megabytes of impact that you can download and install on multiple platforms. You see, we do support Windows, Linux, in different flavors, BSD, Unix, or Mac. And it is as easy as clicking on the icon, download it, and it is deployed with a very simple command line. So it can be deployed using multiple software distribution systems as well. Or if you are in a cloud environment, there is different levels of integration. For example, in Azure, it is part of the process to instantiate and build a virtual machine in the Azure Portal Security Center, or you can blend it into your golden images or into Amazon Machine Image or the same in Google Cloud Platform. Once the Cloud Agent is deployed, as well as any other sensor, they start to collect telemetry. And this telemetry is sent to the Qualys brain, and the Qualys brain automatically categorizes all this information. And here you can see what categorization means. Categorization means the ability to automatically detect the operating system and provide a good breakdown of how many system do I have from Windows or Linux or other operating system, categorizing by their platform how many of them are computers, networking devices, load balancer, and virtual machines, etc. And of course, these are actionable data. Like if I click on server, I will instantly drill down and access to the list of devices that I'm talking about, keeping the ability to group and consuming these devices and these assets for further investigation. Let me get back to the dashboard to give you a more precise idea about how efficiently we do automated categorization by distinguishing server versus client operating system, server versus client hardware, and we can even enrich the metadata that we discovered with non-discoverable metadata to have exposed the total end of life operating system, so the end of life of an operating system, or the obsolescence degree of an hardware. We can, of course, render the data in different, from different standpoint, granular here or unified here. We can understand license categorization to give you an instant view about how many open source versus commercial license you use in the company, the publisher, and as well break them down furthermore into databases, collaboration software, security, and so on and so forth. This is just one example of how widgets, these are widgets, can be combined to form a dashboard. And we can have many, many dashboards. And there is also a very fervent community in Qualys where users are building their dashboard and importing and exporting. You see here how easy it is to export this dashboard or import new dashboard or a new widget. I'll come to widget in a moment because automated categorization is important, but one more important thing is the ability to establish logical perimeters, which we call tagging. And let me move to one of the other application included in VMDR, which is called Asset View, to give you a tangible perspective of what tagging means. So when I go into tag definition, means that I can create new logical perimeters to identify resources in static or dynamic ways. You see how many tags are defined here into this environment. Of course, we can have nested tags, etc. But the interesting thing about tags is that I could create a static one, like Markov's list, and I can decide to tag with different color all the servers that I want to pertain to the same perimeter, or even more efficiently, build a dynamic rule where I can tag solutions and assets by dynamic rules. For example, if a new machine comes out and it has the MAR in the naming convention, I should automatically include them into Markov's list. Or if they are part of any network or IP range. Or I can even say that every server having the port 25 TCP open, they should become tagged as a mail server, and so on and so forth. Tags are very useful because they can be used in many, many ways. If I'm looking at a dash, the one that I was looking earlier, here we go, that I was looking earlier, you can see that I can instantly partialize the data that I'm looking at by applying a tag. So here I click on this little tag and I have all my tags here that I have defined, and I can say, okay, I just want to see Windows workstations, and all the data are instantly reduced to Windows workstation. I can apply tags to reports, I can apply tags to searches, to restrict the visibility of assets for certain users or certain user profiles. Tags are also great when I manage not only IT entities, but when I go to other applications. And now I'm entering, after we have such a great inventory with global IT asset inventory, I'm showcasing now the next step into the VMDR process, which is treating vulnerabilities. So vulnerabilities are detected as part of the metadata that we collect in our landscape. And why it is important to have them treated properly? Because vulnerabilities are way too many. So here you have also the tagging as well into this dashboard to restrict the view to the perimeter that is relevant to you. And here you can have as well other dashboards that are composed to offer the proper view that you want to have into your data. In this case, we are seeing vulnerabilities. So we have open vulnerabilities, we have fixed vulnerabilities. We can look at them by severity. We can look at them by type, whether they are confirmed or potential. We can look at the age of the detection to understand instantly where we are more exposed with old or newer vulnerabilities. But then we can change the perspective and go into another view. For example, collaboration and productivity tools, where we can focus on how many collaboration tools do we have, like Zoom, which versions, which of them are vulnerable to the recent vulnerabilities that affected this platform, and so on and so forth. And the widgets are very important because they are completely customizable and editable. You can build your own widget with this plus sign here, and there are several templates that you can use, or you can clone an existing one or even edit it. Here we are looking at the widget that shows the open vulnerabilities over the last 90 days, and it even gives us an historical trending line to understand how well we are playing in detecting new vulnerabilities or in fixing them. So if I go and edit this widget, here I can easily change the outlook and the look and feel of the same data that are collected by this widget. I can query data source like the vulnerabilities or the assets. And more importantly, I can interact with the widget to enrich it with more data. For example, this widget tracks the open vulnerabilities. I can go here in the lower part of the configuration and say, let's compare with another reference query. So instead of just showing the vulnerabilities that are open, let me also see the ones that have been fixed. And this is not a superset of the initial amount, but it's a distinct set. So we configure it correctly, we test and preview, and instantly this is rendered here. Again, I don't like to see things in red all the time. So we could change the configuration and say this widget should be in a mild white color or light gray color, unless the amount of vulnerabilities that have been detected is greater than, let's say, 10,000. Therefore, I want to highlight it in yellow. And if they go over 200,000, then I want to highlight it in bright red. So this makes my observability very efficient, because the whole dashboard becomes dynamic and behaving the way I want it to behave. Enough for vulnerability, enough for asset inventory. Let's move to the next stage, which is even the core and the most important thing across VMDR. No matter how big your visibility, no matter how well you are detecting vulnerabilities, the vulnerabilities will be always too many to be handled. In this case, we are looking at 312,000 vulnerability, and we are looking at an average number. So how can I deal with them without the ability to properly prioritize? There are techniques to prioritize vulnerabilities, but let me show you why they aren't spectacular. We are moving now from VMDR dashboarding to the VMDR prioritization part, and we want to start a new prioritization exercise. So it all starts by starting with a perimeter. And let me see how we can start with here. We have multiple tags. Let's start with the Windows workstation. Instantly, when I click a specific tag or set of tags, I have a comprehensive understanding of how many assets I am dealing with. And look at that, 401 assets, 104,000 vulnerabilities, which is too many. So I could stick with traditional ways of handling vulnerabilities. which says the CVSS risk scoring system says that I should concentrate on the critical ones. And look at this number. Again, 41,400 vulnerabilities. It's still too many for my capabilities. That's why prioritization is important. And that's why Qualys innovated the process. We say we offer 3 distinct techniques to operate choices to help the backend algorithm to offer guidelines to prioritize. For example, detection age. When these vulnerabilities have been detected, from this outlook, I see that there are lots of them that are older than 180 days. I could make an educated choice and say, let's concentrate on most recent one, or vice versa. Let's include this and let's concentrate on older ones. But again, age is minimally helpful because I don't know how the choices that I'm operating reflects into the danger, into the threats, and into the risk of leaving these vulnerabilities for a second stage. So I concentrate and use, I leave them all enabled, and I concentrate on the second step, real-time threat indicators. This is a combination of cyber threat intelligence, Qualys research, machine learning algorithm predicted high risk is a set of neural networks that has been fed with all our research with vulnerabilities, and it is asked to predict the likelihood that a vulnerability becomes an exploit. I make these type of choices which have no mystic score indicator behind them, but they are categorized. Because I'm talking about Windows workstations, I may be interested in considering only where malware has been weaponized, or when the exploit is wormable because this infection spread fast, or how many of these exploits have been used in recent attacks, or how many of them are part of an exploit kit, because exploit kits are easy to be retrieved. They can even be rented around the black market or as a service. And then I make some choices around the attack surface. I choose to avoid vulnerabilities that are not on running kernel or that are not on running services. I avoid them because if a vulnerability is impacting a service that is not running, it's not exploitable. Or I choose to concentrate on vulnerabilities that are not mitigated by a configuration. For example, the latest Zoom, one of the latest Zoom vulnerabilities and exploitation, which is called the UNC path vulnerability, it was exploited by crafting a specific UNC link into a meeting, and you can paste it in a chat. And then once you click on that link, this vulnerability transmitted your username and password hash to a remote server. So the Zoom team have been very, very efficient in coming up with a solution for this, a patch for this. But meanwhile, they also highlighted how to mitigate this vulnerability. And the mitigation was you need to configure the system to forbid NTLM traffic to travel to remote servers. If you do that, your server is not, or your system is not vulnerable to the UNC path. Again, because we collected telemetry with our sensors, the mitigation we are able to detect. So here we don't want to consider vulnerabilities in our prioritization effort that are mitigated by existing configuration. And then we just click on prioritize now. What the MDR does, it takes our educated choices and it says to us, look, out of 401 assets, you just need to concentrate on 397 of them, which is not that less, but still it's a reduced number. More importantly, you don't have to deal with 104,000 vulnerabilities, but only on 80.6. Still very much, in my opinion, but it is 1/5, or even less, of the previous number. What is more important is out of these 18.6 thousands, they refer to 354 unique vulnerabilities. And to close this, you just need to apply 88 patches. So one thing is to say, guys, sorry, you need to fix 104,000 vulnerabilities. And the reaction most likely is, stop the world, I want to jump out. But 88 patches, well, they can be planned. And I can look at them from the vulnerabilities perspective, on how many hosts they are present, and I can even intervene one by one. Or I can look from the patches perspective and try to look where these patches are, if they are application patches, if they are operating system patches, and when they are, how important they are, and I can even patch them one by one. But let me see if I can even reduce even a bit more this number. By using this last option of the attack surface. Some calls this the attacker's perspective. It is the ability of consider only the vulnerabilities that can be discovered remotely in non-authenticated mode. So looks to me like this can reduce my effort to start with, and I want to enable that. Because I'm interacting with my choices, recalculation instantly happens, and few seconds later, I have new guidelines. Still have to concentrate a high number of assets. The number of instances have decreased a lot, 1,000, and out of these, only 50 vulnerabilities needs to be fixed. But more importantly, my effort boils down to 19 patches. And I can now decide to apply them singularly, or if I have Qualis patch management, I can start a new job. And this new job will allow me to focus on the vulnerabilities that are to be fixed first, vulnerabilities that matters most. So I start, let's say, remediating Windows workstations. Click on next. The selection of the perimeters and the selection of the patch is made by my prior interaction with the system. I can decide to set it up as on demand or scheduled job. And I can even set a duration for the job to last, because maybe I have to respect some productivity time windows. Then I can set up some courtesy messages. You know, when you are dealing with users, psychology is a great art to be used. So I can say, let's inform them about what is going to happen. Remediation job or process for your workstation is about to start. And then again, thanks for the collaboration. As I said, psychology matters. Then I can remind the message in 10 minutes for 3 times, so that at worst in half an hour, the job will start. I can continue to inform them or define other courtesy messages, but I will just inform whenever a reboot request is needed. Sorry, but we need to restart the machine. And again, thanks for your patience. And I will remind them for every 5 minutes, for 5 times, so that in 25 minutes the reboot will happen. And if they really differ insistently, I can even say, sorry, I really need to restart, and the countdown will now start. And I can start the countdown from 1 hour, and I will know that 1 hour later, no matter if it differs or not, but my job will start. So I will go next, review the configuration screen that I have done, and I can save, and from that moment, the patching job starts. So you can now touch or see with your eyes how quick we went from discovery of vulnerabilities to their prioritization and to their to the remediation. So we shorten it tangibly and practically the TTR. Let me get back to the global IT asset inventory for the final part of my demo. I just want to illustrate that yes, we have a fantastic dashboarding system, as I mentioned before, where you can see aggregated information about your asset inventory. But many organizations needs to synchronize this data with other platforms, for example, with a CMDB system. And Qualys included a great API that can be greatly leveraged for an easy synchronization. Let me now move to a ServiceNow instance that is used for CMDB purposes. And you can see here that using a CMDB sync Qualys application, with a couple of clicks of configuration, you can sync information about the asset category, OS distribution, or even enriched data like end-of-life operating systems, or application category, the publisher, the database distribution across the organization. All this can be synchronized with the CMDB system in the cloud, so that you will build really a consistent asset inventory that is even multi-brained depending on the processes that you want to sustain. And to conclude my presentation, I just want to offer you one more functionality that is included in VMDR, which we call policy compliance, which is the ability to validate all the top 20 CIS controls with the same data that you collect with your sensors, reworked and reprocessed by the Qualys brain. We can validate instantly your remote security hygiene of the machines, and you can understand how important this is in these times where many devices are working from home or from remote locations. We offer different perspective over the total number of assets, which has been selected with a tag. We have an instant view of the hygiene or the issues by criticality, the host with most issues or the top security hygiene issues. And here I can, for example, concentrate on macOS 10 population and go checking what is the situation for this type of operating system. And I can see that we have a certain amount of issues. I can see the top failing controls, not very many people encrypting the hard drive. This is not good. And I can also observe the top failing host and even drill down into one of them to understand why this is top failing, how many controls, who is the owner, or what is the issue there. And this will generate a report that is specifically done for that host, where I can investigate better all the issues. And if I see some issues that can be justified, I can click and request for an exception. And the exception request will be distributed to one of the guys that are responsible for the compliance process. So here you see how VMDR can even connect the communication across siloed teams and boost operational efficiency with a simplified and unified workflow. So that's the demo part that I wanted to share with you. And now I will just conclude by saying, summarizing the capabilities that are included in the VMDR. You can use it to build your asset inventory across your whole digital environment. You can have a certificate assessment for managing the digital certificates. Of course, you can track the vulnerabilities at infrastructural level. They will get continuously monitored and alerted in case there is anything anomalous. You can prioritize based on the risk, not based on some magical numbers or scores. And you can validate the benchmarks as per the CIS framework. And you can detect the need for any patch. The number of sensors that you need to deploy to cover the entirety of your digital space doesn't really matter. As many sensors, as many agents that you need, because the VMDR is primarily licensed on number of assets. But VMDR can be expanded to enrich asset inventory or synchronize with the CMDB to a full patch management solution, like I mentioned and like I showcased in the demo, to cover as well the web applications with dynamic application security testing or protection with a web application firewall, to a full feature policy compliance that go way beyond the verification and validation of the CIS benchmarks, and to file integrity monitoring, container security, and assessment of the misconfigurations in cloud. And last but not least, you can support indications of compromise by detecting malicious entities across your entire organization. So in a nutshell, that's what I wanted to share with you all. And I would like to thank you all very much for your kind attention.